What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, back with another fantasy football stardom and situm, this time for week number 4 of the 2019 NFL season. Here to give you my starts and my sits for the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end positions. But before I do, make sure that you Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more fantasy football videos just like this. Make sure you hit that notification bell for the latest videos on the channel, and comment below your opinion. Let me know what you guys think about this week. Who are you starting? Who are you sitting? And if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Let's get right into my starts and sits with the quarterback position, starting off with the one and only Danny Dimes. Of course, Danny Dimes looked incredible last week versus Tampa Bay in his debut. I expect that to continue. And what I love about Danny is really his potential to give you not only the passing yardage, but also the running ability that Daniel Jones possesses. He's an athlete. He can run. He showed it last game. He'll probably do it in this game. And the Redskins, they've allowed 313 yards through the air on the road. I think Danny is going to have another good game, so start Mr. Danny Dimes. Next, we have Jacoby Brissett versus the Oakland Raiders. Jacoby played really well versus Atlanta. He looked legit versus one of the top 10 passing defenses in the NFL last week. The Colts, their offense is very good, very well schemed, very well coached. He's incredible off of play action. He's a very good athlete, just like Daniel Jones. His ability to run will help you in fantasy. And he plays the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders are 25th versus the pass. I expect Jacoby to have another good game and continue his momentum. Jacoby is a guy that is going to continue to get better as he gains more experience in the NFL. Matt Stafford versus Kansas City. Stafford looks like the old Matt Stafford. He looks like a borderline elite quarterback once again. I know the numbers versus the Eagles didn't really show that, but he's making a number of throws that are huge for the Detroit Lions. And this week, he's playing Kansas City, a defense that isn't the greatest, specifically in the secondary. Detroit is at home as well, so it's not like he's traveling to Arrowhead. And Kansas City is expected to score versus basically any opponent they play, which means that this is going to be a good game script for Matt Stafford instead of the heavy run approach, which Detroit might try early in the game. Once Kansas City starts to figure out the Detroit defense, Matt Stafford will be forced to pass the ball, which helps you in fantasy. And Jared Goff versus Tampa Bay. Jared Goff is incredible at home. We all know this. Whenever he's at home, you basically start him. He plays Tampa Bay, which actually has been kind of underrated in terms of a defense this season. But when I look at this, they basically are going to take what Pat Shurmur did with Mr. Danny Dimes. They're going to switch it up. They're going to add a little bit of flavor, and they're going to give it to Jared Goff for a successful game plan in this game. I expect them to run the ball as well, but I do see really Jared Goff having a big performance in this game. He hasn't really had one of those big 3 or 4 touchdown games yet. I expect that to come versus Tampa Bay this week. Quarterback sits. Let's start off with Josh Allen. He plays the best defense, in my opinion, in the NFL right now. That is the New England Patriots, and definitely the best pass defense as they rank number 1. But not only that, they have not given up a touchdown in the past 4 games they have played, including the Super Bowl. So sit Mr. Josh Allen, even if he is at home and playing well so far this season. Tom Brady, on the flip side, he's playing the Buffalo Bills defense, a defense that he hasn't really been very good against for the past 3 games, including 2 in Buffalo. Tom Brady hasn't found a lot of success versus the secondary, one of the better ones in the league. So I expect Tom to have a down week. I would probably sit him because Brady doesn't have those incredible games like he used to as often, so you're not really going to miss much if you do sit him. Then we have Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, I know Kansas City was awesome versus Baltimore's defense last week, and Patrick Mahomes lit it up, but that's Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City offense and Andy Reid. Baker Mayfield has looked awful so far this year, in my opinion. He's struggling under pressure. He's struggling finding his receivers down the field. He's struggling with rhythm in this offense, and Freddie Kitchens is not really helping him in any regard. The offensive line is struggling heavily, and I just see Baltimore's defense at home and their building it's going to make it tough for Baker Mayfield to put up any sort of fantasy relevance in week number 4. Jameis Winston. He's taking on the Rams this week, and the Rams defense has been much better. They've carried over that momentum from the Super Bowl and carried it into 2019. They're 4th versus the pass this year, and they've done a very good job at stopping the number 1 target on an opponent's team, whether it's Odell Beckham or a Michael Thomas. They've kind of figured out the way to shut guys down, Alvin Kamara even, and Jameis Winston, he's had a couple of good games this season, but when I look at the Rams, this is not a good matchup for him. I just don't think you're going to be able to chuck the ball up the way he was against the Giants. The Giants defense is awful, made him look a lot better in that game. You're not going to be able to do that versus Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters. Running back starts this week. Let's start off with Austin Eckler. He's playing the Dolphins, who are giving up the most yards on the ground this season, over 200. So start Austin Eckler for probably the last time as a top 2 running back this season, possibly a flex going forward, but with Melvin Gordon there, we'll have to figure it out on the fly. James Conner, he's playing the Bengals. They're giving up the 2nd most rushing yards this season. He should be able to have his best game this year in prime time. Then you look at Wayne Gallman. Gallman was a big pickup for a lot of people. You spent a lot of money on him to get in your starting lineup, or at least as a flex. So that being said, you should start him this week if you spent the money on him to start him. And like I said with Danny Dimes, this is going to be a shootout. Redskins defense is not very good. I don't care that they have big people or better up front than they are in the secondary. Gallman will have opportunities to score. He'll have opportunities to catch the ball as well, and he is the lead horse, no doubt about it, for the Giants going forward. Adrian Peterson versus the Giants. The Giants' defense is awful. We know this. Tampa Bay was able to run versus them, which Tampa Bay can't run versus anybody, which means that Adrian Peterson should have a good game here, especially if Dwayne Haskins actually has to start here. They're not sure. I think Keenum's a little bit banged up. So if Keenum doesn't start, that's even more reason to start Adrian Peterson because they're more likely to run the football. If Keenum does start, though, that's probably going to be better for the offense in general, which means Peterson will have more likely an ability to get in the end zone this week. And then we have Chris Carson versus Arizona. Carson has had some fumbling issues, but Arizona has been really bad versus the run. The Cards gave up 177 yards on the ground last week versus Carolina. So that being said, the Cards, I just think they're not a very good defense. Plus, on offense, they run a lot of plays, which means that there's going to be a lot of plays ran in this game. The tempo is pushed, which means Carson has more opportunity to run the football. Plus, the Seahawks should be winning in this game late, which means that Carson will see more of the football and probably see a couple goal line opportunities in this one. My running back sits. Frank Gore versus New England. New England is the number 1 run defense in the league, as well as the number 1 pass in the league. And when you look at Frank Gore, he's good this season and playing well, but versus New England, I just don't love the matchup. I think their offensive line is outmanned, and because the Patriots are able to match up on the outside versus like a John Brown and a Cole Beasley, I think they'll afford more players to stop the run in the box, which means Frank Gore shouldn't get much going in this game. So I would sit Frank Gore, especially if Singletary is back as well. You look at Devontae Freeman, he's playing the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are a big defense up front, and Atlanta has been on and off with their rushing attack. I do like what I saw from Freeman last week. He looked like his old self a little bit more, and he looked like he was coming back from that injury a little bit better than the previous couple of weeks. But despite facing Nick Chubb, Marlon Mack, and Leonard Fournette, the Titans are actually still top 10 in defending running backs in fantasy this season. Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman versus the Jags. The Jags are stout versus the run. They have a lot of big people, a lot of explosive players up in their front 7. You look at Jalen Ramsey being out for this game, so that means that the Broncos will likely try to pass a little bit more than they traditionally would versus a Jags secondary. So I think that leaves the Jags susceptible in the back end, which means they're less likely to run the ball. The Broncos are. And then you have Ronald Jones. Yes, Jones was successful last week, but I don't see it this week. The Rams are only allowing actually less than 3 yards a carry at home. That being said, I don't see the Tampa Bay Bucks leading in this game, which means less running, less of a run game script, more passing for Jameis Winston. I don't see Ronald Jones being very successful in LA. The wide receiver starts. Scary Terry. He's the first player in NFL history with 5 catches, a receiving touchdown in each of his first 3 NFL games. Start him versus the worst secondary in the NFL. Curtis Samuel, plays the Houston Texans. Kyle Allen has been accurate. Kyle Allen has been decisive, and he knows how to get the ball in his receiver's hands, his playmakers' hands in open space. Curtis Samuel is exactly that. He was their leading receiver last week. I expect him to see plenty of targets versus Texans secondary that's definitely susceptible to the pass. Larry Fitzgerald, Seahawks secondary, kind of iffy this season. It's been on and off. It's been up and down. It's been giving up big plays more than usual. They're also struggling at their slot corner position with Coleman gone to Detroit. I expect Larry Fitzgerald to have another big game versus Seahawks. 3 games in a row, he's had at least 13 PPR points versus Seattle. Sterling Shepard, in his first game with Daniel Jones, he had 7 catches, 100 yards. He now plays the Redskins. The Redskins were torn apart by Mitch Trubisky of all people, so start Sterling Shepard. Josh Gordon, my wide receiver, sits. He starts it off because he plays basically the man that was made in a factory to stop him, and that's Tre'Davious White. Basically, the Bills are a good secondary, one of the best in the league. They don't give up a lot of big plays, which is where Josh Gordon makes his money, and he's playing a corner that basically is the cornerback version of himself. Also, a cornerback version of himself is Will Fuller taking on Dante Jackson of the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are actually number 2 in pass defense this season, which was shocking when I saw it. They've only given up 127 yards on the road this season through the air, like on average, which is really, really good. And Will Fuller has not had a good game this season yet from a fantasy perspective. So I expect him versus a speedy corner in Dante Jackson to not have many big plays and probably be limited to another kind of 4 catch for 50-yard type of performance. I just don't see this being the breakout week for Will Fuller. John Brown plays the New England Patriots. If he sees Stephon Gilmore, that's a no-no. If he sees Jonathan Jones, that's a no-no. Both players rank in the top 5 for PFF in coverage grade. Then you look at the Patriots' pass defense, which I said is the best in the league. They've only given up 5 receptions on 27 attempts deep down the field this season. So John Brown, a deep receiver. Don't expect him to do much damage versus New England this week. Stephon Diggs versus Chicago. While he may be afforded more one-on-ones this week, he'll probably be afforded those one-on-ones versus Kyle Fuller, who's one of the better corners in the NFL. The Bears defense has dominated the Vikings very recently. Last season, they destroyed them 2 games last year. I don't expect Diggs to have another probably lousy game in this one because they're just not passing the ball enough for him to have a lot of success. Most of it is going to Adam Thielen. DJ Chark. Chark plays the Broncos and will likely see his worst game of the season this week, as the Broncos have been very good versus number 1 receivers, which Chark now is for the Jags. And a lot of that is due to Chris Harris as well. They play basically Allen Robinson and Devontae Adams. Both of them had pretty lousy games. I don't expect DJ Chark to be the one to break the trend. The tight end starts, Darren Waller. Only Keenan Allen actually has more receptions than Waller this season. That's it. At the wide receiver, at the tight end position, Waller is number 2 in receptions. He does play a team like the Colts, who are a very big zone team. They're very conservative in the back end, which means that Waller should see a lot of receptions underneath and be able to get some yards after the catch. Will Disley. He is one of the best red zone targets in the league right now. He's being frequently targeted by Russell Wilson in the red zone. I mean, he plays a Cardinals defense that's the worst versus tight ends in the league, and he's also out there in many leagues on the waiver wire. Go pick him up. Delanie Walker had a good week last week, but he didn't hit the end zone. I expect him to actually probably hit the end zone this week versus a defense that's now missing Keanu Neal, the guy that took on a lot of the tight ends across the league. They'll have to figure out how to match up with Delanie Walker this week, and I don't think it will be a favorable matchup for the Atlanta secondary. I would go with Delanie Walker, who's probably the number 1 option in the passing game in Tennessee. Vernon Davis. Davis, even at his old age, has been very effective when Jordan Reed has not been out there. Jordan Reed has not been out there thus far this season, and Vernon Davis had a really good week 1, his only other performance on the road. This week, he plays on the road versus the Giants, and it just seems like the Giants, if you play them and your players play them on your fantasy lineup, start the players that you have, because anybody with a pulse is pretty much good versus the Giants defense. All right, guys, that is my start and sit recommendations for week number 4 of the 2019 season. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, Gronk, spike that like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more fantasy videos just like this, and comment any questions you have for me. Thanks for watching. It's been Mitch. Peace out.